LPT. When starting a new job, find out how long your coworkers have been there. If no one has been working there for very long, and it's not a new company, that may be a red flag. And keep track of who keeps posting on job sites. Same place, same location, seeking for the same job type. New ad once every couple of weeks to once a month. They're looking for more employees that often. For a staff size of like 40, there's a reason for that. All of the worst jobs I had, are still posted almost monthly on job sites. I just hadn't been around long enough to know who was always looking for people. Same. Worst job I ever had just keeps all of their jobs listed forever. They don't actually care what you apply for. They just make you do sales. That was a fun place to be. /s. The company I work at has an average turnaround of 6 weeks. I'm interviewing with a company RN that said in my interview that they've had more people retire in the last 2 years than be fired or quit. God, I hope I land that job. The company I'm currently at went through a hiring spree last year, went from external sales reps to an in-house sales team, which took them from about 175 to 250-ish employees. Accounting for the new hires, the average tenure at the company is still over 10 years. Working with happy people has been a nice change of pace. Good luck. I worked at a job where the people that had been there for 10 years were worse than the new hires. They had 10 years of unchecked shitty work habits because they'd get away with stuff. Then they would teach the new people these behaviors, and it was a mess. Within 5 years it typically becomes pretty obvious. Either you outgrow the company or the company outgrows you. Not at this place. The head manager was there for 20 years and was chummy with the 10-year people. So much so that he turned a blind eye to what they did or just laughed it off. As a supervisor there it was a lose-lose because you couldn't have any action taken against them due to the head guy just shrugging it off. This place was a state-funded, city-run facility. Leaving that place felt so good. Pretty much my experience with any government-funded office. It's mostly to keep the unqualified people and quickly get the qualified people out who could replace the head manager, since they are more qualified. Work in government-funded job. Can confirm. Don't you dare go on being smart and qualified trying to get ahead. It threatens those already in power positions. My GF just went through this. She started a job, immediately started getting bad vibes from it. Basically all of the non-management staff had been there less than 2 years, and almost all of them quit in the same 4-month period. Edit. Damn. This blew up a little. A little background I suppose. She was hired as a consultant, but her primary duty turned out to be sales, which she isn't comfortable with. The bosses were far more concerned with getting as many clients as possible. No matter how bad of a fit it was. It was good money, but she was miserable. I'm very glad she left. Even if she hasn't found something new and reliable yet thanks to COVID. Similar experience here. Got hired onto a company and got some sketchy vibes. But I had been laid off, so I needed a job. Trained with a guy who was one of the most veteran employees. He said he had been there 2 years. I saw some massive issues and decided to cut losses and run. Same. I was in a company where no one apart from the founders, even management, could last more than a year. When I went I was a veteran in the company. Me, an apprentice. My coworker, also an apprentice, and I both arrived and left on the same day. If you don't mind me asking what was wrong with the place. Everyone was doing coke off of the hiring manager's bunghole who had clearly visible herpes. I've been a little nervous about my current job for this reason. When I was hired, all but one of my coworkers had been here for over 4 years. With the employee I was replacing, having been there for 2. Since then, every single one of them has quit. And I'm now the most senior employee in my department at 2 years. It seems like it went from a job with almost no turnover to one of the highest turnover levels in our small company. I love working here, but I'm concerned that it's a sign of recently bad management. You sometimes get a domino effect. You have a group of workers who form just that, a group. They've worked with each other for years etc. They're essentially friends, even if they don't hang out outside of work. If one of them leaves, for any reason, you can sometimes find that soon after another will go because they've lost a person close to them. Perhaps the vibe isn't the same, etc. Once a couple go, it can quickly unravel. That's true. I didn't even think about that. If my cohort of coworkers hired around my time left, I would have little motivation to stay. Happened to me when I worked at a small store. Started with the supervisor, my buddy, and then me. All that was left was one staff member after the great exodus month. On the opposite side, if there are employees, boomers, that have been there forever, then expect little change. My favorite way of seeing companies collapse is when the one guy that knows how everything works retires or gets fired, and suddenly the whole production stalls or the quality drops to abysmal levels. In 1 year we lost the 2 people that know everything at my job. Their replacements have done a good job catching up, but the loss is still huge. I left a company just over a year ago at the same time as one of my employees. We were in charge of 90% of the accounting, payroll, ERP system, and financial reporting. It was just coincidence that we resigned in the same week, but we had had enough of the owners. They're still trying to figure out everything we did over a year later. Oh god, that feeling is better than sex. Yeah, this is super apparent at minimum wage jobs like Domino's. Most employees only last an average of 4 months. It's so terrible here. I'm one of only 4 employees that have been here more than a year. The other 3 are all managers. A lot of low-level jobs like to cycle through people looking for the personality type that will put up with their abuse, low pay, poor conditions, lack of respect, lack of benefits, etc. They know they will eventually find those people and build a staff that will last a long time. Those people are so beaten down and depressed that the operation is never hugely successful. But the owner doesn't care. He's profitable enough, and he can get his jollies off abusing his slaves. You just explained my last job perfectly. Eventually, I, admittedly, had a hand in it and was aware of what kind of staff I needed. I was only there for a few months before being promoted to manager and sifted through dozens upon dozens of applicants to find the type of personality that would put up with our owner's abuse. I felt horrible whenever a few months after being hired the happy-go-lucky employee turned depressed and cynical, but continued to hang on to the job since the pay was just good enough. I worked for a company like that for about a year because it was a good line on my resume, and it put me in contact with suppliers that I wanted to work for. It was a good jumping off point, but a terrible work environment with a highly abusive company owner. I went to a manager's Christmas dinner where the longest working employee was a manager who had been there more than 10 years. Despite the fact that he had never had a raise or a vacation, he got the Manager of the Year award, which consisted of a cheap plaque and a $100 bill. He had won it several years in a row, and everybody expected he would get it. It was a dozen unhappy managers with dead eyes, and all of them had been there for years. None of them had probably had raises either. The owner was also known for threatening to fire you the day before your vacation started if you left. And it wasn't even a paid vacation. He threatened me when I took my vacation, and I just blew it off and told him what day I'd be back at work. I returned and he never said a word. My situation worked out exactly as I planned, and I got a great job with one of my suppliers. The moment I told the owner, he offered to match the pay, about a 40% bump, and benefits. But I wasn't going to miss this rare opportunity. It was an amazing company, too. And I knew the guy would cheat me out of his promises anyway. LPT, never stop looking for the next job. Unless you are an E or C class employee, you should keep fielding offers to find out what you're worth. It gives you leverage for raises. And worst case, if a company doesn't value you, or you end up at the wrong place, you have an out. What's an E or C class employee? I haven't heard the term before. C class is chief anything. E, G, CEO or CEO. Got it. Makes sense. Thanks. E is executive, like executive director. Typically sits under C-suite. I worked at a company that made critical airplane engine components. The type of parts that were crucial to keep the plane in the air. Meticulous welding and assembly processes and FAA testing. The whole shebang. I sensed they were in trouble financially just from overhearing conversations. When I noticed a lot of deadwood around. Useless employees not crucial to the product line. Also, when I found out the CEO was there for a year when I was hired. This is a red flag cause he was a young guy and had to look good with increased profits each year, which wasn't gonna happen. The final nail in my employment coffin was when I found out the production supervisor was previously a manicure girl at a local beauty spot. Wrong person in the wrong job. They had no idea how to hire and keep a properly experienced workforce. Never again. The type of parts that were crucial to keep the plane in the air. The left phalange? We're all getting off. There is no phalange.